My wife left me for a richer man. Then his secret destroyed everything. The first thing my wife said before leaving me was, "I'm tired of surviving." Then she took off her wedding ring, placed it beside my cold coffee, and walked out of our apartment with another man waiting downstairs in a black Mercedes. I still remember the sound of his horn, to short taps, like he was impatient for my marriage to die already. I stood there in my wrinkled office shirt, while rain hit the windows behind me. No screaming, no dramatic fight, just silence so heavy it felt alive. My wife, Vanessa, didn't even look back when she reached the elevator. 7 years together, gone in 30 seconds. And the worst part, I still loved her enough to hope she'd come back upstairs and say it was all a mistake. She didn't. The elevator doors closed, and that was the moment my life cracked open. I sat there 4 hours staring at the ring on the table. Outside, Lagos traffic screamed through flooded streets, while generators hummed from nearby buildings. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, empty plates in the sink, her perfume still hanging in the air. One pink slipper under the couch, tiny ghosts everywhere. My phone buzzed close to midnight. It was my younger sister, Tenny. "Did Vanessa really leave?" she asked carefully. I laughed, not because it was funny, because pain sometimes sounds exactly like laughter. "She upgraded," I told her. "To what?" "A billionaire." There was silence. Then Tenny sighed. "You know what hurts me most?" she whispered. "What?" "She used to brag about how loyal you were." That sentence nearly destroyed me, because she was right. I had loved Vanessa like a man building a church with his bare hands. Slowly, carefully, completely. I skipped meals to help her finish fashion school. I worked overtime to pay hospital bills for her mother. I sold my first car so we could move into a better apartment after our wedding. And now another man was driving her around in a Mercedes, while I sat alone eating cold noodles from a plastic bowl. That night, I cried harder than I ever had in my adult life. But I had no idea the man she left me for was hiding something ugly enough to destroy all of us. And somehow, I would become the reason his empire collapsed. 3 weeks after Vanessa left, I saw her face on a billboard. I almost crashed my car. She stood beside Richard Holloway, one of the richest real estate developers in Nigeria. 52 years old, sharp suits, private jet, smile like a crocodile pretending to be friendly. The billboard advertised a luxury charity gala. Vanessa wore diamonds around her neck. The same woman who once cried with me because we couldn't afford shawarma after church. I parked by the roadside and stared at the giant photo while Danfo buses screamed past me. A street hawker knocked on my window selling plantain chips. "Boss, buy for your girlfriend," he joked. I almost told him my wife had been repossessed by capitalism. Instead, I bought 2 packs and drove away trying not to lose my mind. At work, people pretended not to know, but they knew. Everybody knew. My colleagues gave me those fake sympathetic smiles people reserve for widowers and football fans after penalties. One afternoon, my manager called me into his office. "Kunle," he said gently, "you've missed several deadlines. I know. You're distracted. My wife left me for a billionaire, sir." "I'm trying my best." The man removed his glasses slowly. Then he surprised me. "My first wife left me for a pastor," he said. I blinked. "What?" She said God called her elsewhere. I stared at him. He stared back. Then both of us started laughing, exhausted prisoners. For the first time in weeks, I laughed without pain. But that same evening, everything changed again. I received a message from an unknown number. "You don't know who Richard Holloway really is." That was it. No name, no explanation, just one sentence. I ignored it at first. Rich men always had enemies. Maybe someone wanted gossip. Maybe it was a prank. Then another message came. "Ask your wife why Richard's previous assistant disappeared." My stomach tightened instantly. I reread the text 7 times. Disappeared. What kind of message was this? I called the number immediately. Switched off. I barely slept that night. The next morning, curiosity started poisoning me from the inside. By noon, I did something stupid. I drove to Richard Holloway's headquarters. The building looked like something imported from another country. Glass walls, luxury cars everywhere, security guards dressed better than my accountant. And then I saw Vanessa stepping out of Richard's car. She looked beautiful, but not happy. That detail hit me harder than I expected, because Vanessa used to smile with her entire face. Now she smiled carefully, like someone rehearsing happiness for an audience. Before I could think, I rolled down my window. Vanessa, she froze. Richard turned slowly toward me. The man's eyes were cold enough to refrigerate meat. Vanessa walked toward my car nervously. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I could ask you the same thing. You need to leave." Who disappeared? Her face lost color instantly. That was when I knew the message was real. Vanessa kept glancing behind her while Richard spoke to his security guards near the entrance. The fear in her eyes unsettled me. This wasn't guilt anymore. This looked like panic. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "Someone texted me." "Delete the messages." My heart skipped. "Vanessa, please." She grabbed my wrist tightly. The same hand that once held mine while we prayed for better days. "You don't understand this, man." I stared at her. For weeks I had imagined confronting her with anger, but now anger was being replaced by something stranger. Fear. "What happened to you?" I asked softly. Her eyes watered immediately. Then Richard started walking toward us. Vanessa stepped back fast, too fast, like a child caught stealing. Richard smiled at me, but there was no warmth in it. "You must be the husband," he said calmly. "Ex-husband." "Ah," he nodded slowly like he was studying me. "I hope there's no problem." I wanted to insult him. Instead, I asked the only thing stuck in my head. Who disappeared? The smile vanished from his face, only for a second. But I saw it, and Vanessa saw that I saw it. Richard adjusted his expensive watch. "Be careful what nonsense you entertain online," he said quietly. Then he placed a hand on Vanessa's back, possessive, controlled. "Come inside." She looked at me one last time before following him, and in that moment I realized something terrifying. Vanessa wasn't living a fairy tale. She was trapped inside one. That evening, another anonymous message arrived. "Meet me at beach, 9 p.m. Come alone." Every intelligent part of my brain screamed not to go. But heartbreak makes people stupid. By 9:30, I was sitting near the dark shoreline while music blasted from distant bars. The ocean crashed violently against the sand. Then a woman sat beside me wearing a hoodie. She looked exhausted, like life had beaten her repeatedly. "My name is Marie," she said. "You sent the messages." She nodded. Then she handed me a newspaper clipping. "Missing person. A young woman named Janet Benson, former executive assistant to Richard Holloway. Missing for 2 years. She was my sister," Mary whispered. I felt cold instantly. What does this have to do with Vanessa? Richard targets women who need saving. My stomach tightened. Mary continued staring at the ocean. "He showers them with money, gifts, opportunities. Then he controls them. You're saying he kidnapped your sister?" "I'm saying my sister found something terrible." "What?" Mary looked directly at me. "Richard launders money for politicians." The waves crashed harder behind us. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "And I think your wife knows too much now." 4 days I tried convincing myself Mary was lying, but the pieces kept fitting together too perfectly. Vanessa's nervous behavior, Richard's reaction, the missing assistant, the anonymous warnings. Even worse, Vanessa suddenly stopped posting online. No pictures, no luxury events, nothing. The silence disturbed me more than the betrayal ever did. One night, around 1 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Heavy breathing. Then Vanessa's voice. "Kunle." My chest tightened instantly. "Where are you?" "I can't talk long." She sounded terrified. Not sad. Terrified. "I made a mistake," she whispered. Before I could respond, a man's voice echoed somewhere near her. She gasped softly. Then the call disconnected. I called back repeatedly. Nothing. By morning I was losing my mind. Tenny found me pacing my apartment like a criminal avoiding arrest. "You still love her, don't you?" she asked. I sat down slowly. "She destroyed me." That's not an answer. I rubbed my face, then quietly said the truth. If she's in danger, I can't ignore it. Tenny stared at me for several seconds. Then she shook her head with a sad smile. You're either the strongest man I know, or the dumbest. Honestly, she might have been right about both. That afternoon, I contacted Mary again. We met at a small eatery where generators nearly drowned out conversations. Mary slid a flash drive across the table. My sister sent me this before she disappeared. What's inside? Financial records. I stared at the tiny device. It suddenly felt heavier than metal should. Why give it to me? Because Richard thinks you're harmless. That line stayed in my head. Harmless. All my life people underestimated me because I was quiet. But quiet people notice things. And for the first time since Vanessa left, something inside me changed. The heartbreak stopped feeling like death. It started feeling like fuel. I took the flash drive home and opened the files. What I found made my blood freeze. Millions of dollars transferred through fake companies, government contracts, bribes, private recordings, names of powerful people, and buried deep inside one folder, a video file labeled Janet Final. My hand trembled while clicking it. The video showed Janet secretly recording herself inside an office. She looked terrified. If anything happens to me, she whispered into the camera, Richard Holloway is responsible. My heart pounded violently. Then Janet said something worse. He keeps evidence on everyone close to him, especially the women. The screen suddenly glitched. Footsteps echoed outside her office. Janet looked toward the door in panic. Then the video ended abruptly. I sat there in silence, sweating, breathing hard. That was the exact moment I realized Vanessa might not survive this situation. I barely slept for 2 days. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every black SUV outside my building looked suspicious. I started locking my doors twice, checking mirrors while driving. Paranoia settled into my bones like infection. Then Vanessa showed up unexpectedly. 4:17 a.m. Heavy rain. Desperate knocking. When I opened the door, she looked nothing like the glamorous woman from the billboard. Mascara ruined, hair soaked, hands trembling. She threw herself into my arms crying so hard her body shook. And despite everything she had done to me, I held her. Because love is complicated. Because pain doesn't automatically kill history. Because some people leave fingerprints on your soul forever. She kept apologizing between sobs. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I guided her inside quietly. For several minutes neither of us spoke. Rain battered the windows while she sat wrapped in my old hoodie. Finally she looked at me. You were right about him. I laughed bitterly. I didn't even know anything. He records everything. My stomach dropped. What? He keeps files on politicians, business partners, everyone. Why? To control them. She wiped tears from her face. Then shame slowly filled her expression. At first it felt exciting, she admitted. The money, the trips, the attention. I stayed silent. Because hearing your wife explain why another man impressed her is a special kind of torture. But then I saw things. Like what? Women crying after meetings. Employees terrified of him. Security guards following people. She swallowed hard. And one night I heard Richard arguing with somebody about Janet. The room felt colder instantly. What did he say? Vanessa hesitated, then quietly answered. He said dead people should stay buried. My blood ran cold. Vanessa started crying again. I wanted to leave weeks ago. Then why didn't you? She looked at me with unbearable guilt. Because I was ashamed to come back after what I did to you. That sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. I stared at this woman who had shattered my heart, and suddenly I saw something tragic. Vanessa hadn't left because she stopped loving me. She left because she got seduced by the fantasy of never struggling again. And now the fantasy was rotting around her. Then her phone buzzed. Richard, calling again, and again, and again. We stared at the screen together while rain hammered the city outside. Finally, a message appeared. If you embarrass me, you'll regret it. Vanessa looked genuinely afraid. That was when I made my decision. I was done being the broken husband left behind. Richard Holloway wanted control, fine. I was about to destroy the one thing men like him fear most: exposure. The plan sounded insane. Because it was. Mary connected me with an investigative journalist named Femi Lawson. Sharp eyes, messy beard. The kind of man who looked permanently sleep-deprived from chasing dangerous truths. We met inside a tiny office above a noisy printing shop. Femi reviewed the files silently for nearly 40 minutes. Then he leaned back slowly. "This could destroy ministers," he said. "Can you publish it?" He looked at me carefully. "Do you understand what happens if we do?" I nodded. "No, you don't." His voice lowered. "Men like Richard don't lose quietly." Vanessa sat beside me trembling. Femi noticed immediately. "You can still walk away," he told her. She shook her head slowly. "No more running." For the first time in months, I felt proud of her again. Not because she came back, but because fear was no longer controlling her. Over the next week, everything escalated fast. Strange cars followed me. My apartment was broken into. But nothing was stolen. A warning. One night, somebody slipped a photograph under my door. It was a picture of me buying food from a roadside vendor, taken from far away. On the back, one sentence was written: "Stop digging." Vanessa nearly broke down completely. "This is my fault," she kept saying. But strangely, I felt calmer now. Pain had sharpened me. The man crying beside cold noodles, weeks earlier, no longer existed. Richard thought money made him untouchable. That was his mistake. Arrogant people always forget one thing: secrets rot, and eventually the smell escapes. The final blow came unexpectedly. Mary received new information from a former driver who once worked for Richard. The driver claimed Janet never disappeared voluntarily. She tried taking evidence to authorities, then vanished the same night. Femi immediately prepared the story for publication. Massive corruption, money laundering, blackmail, possible murder. The article was explosive enough to burn careers to the ground, and Richard somehow found out before it released. Because 2 nights before publication, he came to my apartment personally. No security, no assistance, just him standing outside my door wearing a dark suit, calm, smiling, like the devil arriving politely. Vanessa froze when she saw him. Richard looked at her with disappointment more than anger. "You could have had everything," he said softly. Then he turned to me. "You think exposing me changes anything?" I stared back silently. Richard smiled again. "Men far more powerful than you depend on me." Good. That surprised him. I stepped closer. "Then they'll fall with you." For the first time, Richard's expression cracked slightly. Just slightly. Enough for me to see the fear underneath all that expensive confidence. He leaned toward me quietly. "You still love her after what she did?" I looked at Vanessa, then back at him. "Yes." Richard stared for a second too long, like he genuinely didn't understand the answer. And that's when I realized something profound. Men like Richard understand ownership, control, power, but love, real love, that kind of loyalty was completely foreign to him. Before leaving, Richard gave one final warning. "If that article goes live, people will die." Then he walked away into the darkness. Vanessa started shaking beside me, but I already knew something he didn't. His empire was collapsing, and deep down, he knew it too. The article dropped at exactly 6 a.m. By 6:12, social media exploded. By 7 o'clock, television stations were reporting emergency investigations. By noon, Richard Holloway's headquarters looked like a war zone. Police vehicles, reporters, panicked employees flooding outside. The story spread faster than anyone expected. People online started sharing their own experiences about Richard. Former staff, threatened contractors, women describing manipulation and intimidation. The cracks became an avalanche, and then the biggest shock arrived. Authorities reopened Janet Benson's case officially. Mary called me crying uncontrollably. For the first time, she whispered, "Somebody believes us." That sentence stayed with me, because powerful people survive by making ordinary people feel invisible. Once the silence breaks, everything changes. Richard tried fighting back publicly. Press conferences, lawyers, denials, but the evidence was overwhelming now. Worse still, several politicians immediately abandoned him to save themselves. Funny how loyalty disappears when handcuffs appear nearby. Vanessa watched the news beside me quietly. No makeup, no luxury dresses. Just the woman I married sitting cross-legged on our old couch. At some point, she started crying softly again. "I ruined us," she whispered. I didn't answer immediately, because healing is complicated. Pain doesn't disappear simply because the villain loses. Finally, I looked at her. "You hurt me more than anybody ever has." She nodded silently. "But I also know you're not evil." That broke her completely. She covered her face crying, while years of pride collapsed inside her. And honestly, part of me cried too. Not because everything was magically fixed, but because I finally understood something important. People don't always destroy relationships because they stop loving you. Sometimes they destroy them chasing illusions. And by the time reality arrives, everything valuable is already bleeding. 3 days later, Richard Holloway was arrested while attempting to leave the country. The video went viral instantly. The same man who once walked around like a king now looked pale and exhausted, being escorted through an airport. No private jet could save him now. No expensive suit could hide fear. His empire collapsed within weeks. Properties seized, business partners investigated, accounts frozen, and buried beneath all the corruption and scandal. Authorities eventually discovered human remains connected to Janet's case. Mary called me again after the identification. This time she didn't cry loudly. She just whispered, "At least she can come home." I sat silently for a long time after that call ended, because revenge feels different when real grief enters the room. Richard didn't just ruin lives, he erased them. And somehow my broken marriage had accidentally exposed a monster. A year later, I stood beside the ocean again. Same city, different man. The wind carried salt through the evening air while waves crashed endlessly against the shore. Beside me, Vanessa held a paper cup of coffee with both hands. We weren't magically perfect now. Healing took therapy, ugly conversations, long nights, trust rebuilt inch by inch. Some scars never fully disappear, but strangely, we survived. Not because love alone saves people, but because truth finally entered the room. Vanessa looked at me quietly. "You know what scares me most?" She asked. "What?" "That I almost traded my soul for comfort." I stared at the horizon, then answered honestly. "We all get tempted by easier lives." She nodded slowly. "But you never stopped loving me." I smiled faintly. "That was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done." She laughed through tears, and for the first time in a very long time, the sound felt real again. As the sun disappeared behind the dark water, my phone buzzed with another news alert about Richard Holloway's upcoming trial. I looked at the headline for a moment, then locked the screen without opening it. Because men like Richard spend their entire lives believing money makes them untouchable. But eventually every secret demands payment, and sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the quiet husband everybody underestimated. Please click the subscribe button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss updates on our upcoming videos.